This is Audible.
Brilliance Audio. No Rings Attached by Rachel Lacey. Performed by Zara Hampton Brown. Chapter 1. I can't believe I have to fly to London alone. Leah Harris carefully folded the garment bag containing her bridesmaid dress into her luggage, feeling her mood fold along with it. She zipped her suitcase and set it on the floor with a thump. She'd planned this trip down to the last detail, and yet somehow she'd failed to prepare for this moment. It's such a bummer, Rosie agreed, sitting cross-legged on Leah's bed with her little dog Brinkley in her lap. I wish I could go with you. So do I, Leah said, trying not to sound as wistful as she felt. Rosie was her best friend, but since she owned Between the Pages bookstore and cafe, and Leah managed the store, they had to alternate their days off. When Leah had first learned that her brother was getting married, she dearly hoped she would have a partner to bring with her on the big day, because her family had been insufferable lately in their quest to see her happily paired off. The problem was, despite many, many dates, Leah remained frustratingly single. One by one, her friends had fallen in love. In less than a week, both her siblings would be married, and Leah would still stand alone. Worse, her ex would be at the wedding, and her mother was on a mission to get them back together. Leah hated that she was preoccupied with her dating woes ahead of such an important weekend. She loved weddings, and she was especially excited to see her brother tie the knot. If only she had someone special to bring with her. At the other end of the apartment, the front door swung open with a distinctive squeak, followed by a thump as it bumped the stopper. "Dinner's here," a voice called. "Yay!" Rosie set Brinkley down and stood, brushing a hand through her blonde curls. Brinkley trotted out of the room, and Leah and Rosie followed him down the hall, where the rest of their roommates had gathered around several large white paper bags on the kitchen table. "The container's marked with a C, a chicken piccata," Paige said as she began to unpack the bags of food. "The rest are portobello Wellington." Rosie said appreciatively as she took one of the Wellingtons. "You're spoiling us tonight." Paige worked at her girlfriend Nikki's catering company, and occasionally they were able to bring home leftovers. The food was extremely well timed for Leah tonight, because she needed to leave for the airport in about 15 minutes, and now she wouldn't have to eat there. "Thank you," Leah told Paige, as she took a container of chicken piccata. "You bet. All packed?" Paige asked. "Yes," she smiled, feeling a spark of excitement about her trip, even though she'd be making it alone. The UK was lovely in June. Too often she only went home at Christmas time, when the weather was cold and dreary. And because tomorrow was Wednesday, she'd have a whole day to herself in London before she drove to her parents' house for the wedding. "Don't forget lip balm," Paige said. "Airplanes always dry me out." "And earbuds, so you can listen to music, or an audiobook," Jane said as she walked into the kitchen. She paused to kiss Rosie before selecting a meal for herself. "This smells amazing." Paige beamed at her. "Thanks." Nikki brought plates and utensils to the table, and they all moved around each other, preparing their plates. Leah took her usual seat at the end of the table, as Brinkley nosed around her feet, already looking for any morsels she might have dropped. "I've got lip balm and earbuds." "They've been in your bag for days," Rosie teased as she sat beside her. "Your suitcase has basically been packed since last weekend." "You're so much more organized than I am," Nikki said. "I'm a total last-minute packer." Leah shrugged as she bit into her chicken. Yes, she was organized. She planned ahead. And yet she couldn't seem to plan her love life, no matter how hard she tried. She imagined her mother's reaction when she arrived for the wedding weekend alone, the disapproving look she'd receive, followed by a lecture about her age, and then the matchmaking would begin. Dread soured her stomach. "Do your parents still think you're bringing your girlfriend this weekend?" Paige asked, giving her a sympathetic look. "Unfortunately, yes." A few months ago, Leah had dated a woman for several weeks, long enough that she had become hopeful, long enough that she'd told her mother about her. Leah got ahead of herself and planned too far into the future with the wrong person, an unfortunate habit she was trying to break. But when the relationship ended, she had never set the record straight with her parents. It had been so easy to let a non-existent girlfriend keep her mother from obsessing about finding someone suitable for Leah to date. "So you're not going to tell them until you get there?" Rosie asked. "Would it be awful if I just tell them she couldn't make it?" Leah asked as she looked at her friends. Rosie and Jane sat beside her, and Paige and Nikki were across from them. Two couples. Even in her own apartment, Leah was the odd one out these days. "If it would make the weekend easier for you, I say go for it," Nikki offered. "I'm never going to hear the end of it if they find out I'm single again, especially with Asher there," Leah lamented. Her ex was a big part of the reason Leah had left the UK and moved to New York in the first place. "Well, here's an idea. What if I call Grace?" Rosie suggested. "If she's not busy, maybe she could pretend to be your girlfriend for the weekend." Leah rolled her eyes. "Your imaginary friend? Forgive me for being skeptical that she'd show up." Grace was Rosie's best friend from high school, and she was notorious for backing out of things at the last minute, so unreliable that Leah had never even met the woman. After Grace bailed on one of her planned visits a few years ago, Leah had jokingly called her Rosie's imaginary friend, because it was ludicrous that none of Rosie's friends had met her, and the name had stuck. "It's hard for her to make it to New York," Rosie said, sounding pensive. "But she's not flaky otherwise, and as you know, she moved to London a few months ago. It's late over there now, but I'll call her in the morning, okay? Worst case, she says no. Best case, you get a date to the wedding after all, and my two best friends will finally meet." Grace Poston sipped her coffee as she walked home from lunch, her gaze drifting from the ornately carved buildings before her to the grey-tinted sky above, and if it was possible, she fell a little bit more in love with London. Okay, the weather wasn't her favourite, but she would happily put up with it to be here in the city. After she'd spent over a decade in the Spanish countryside, London's hustle and bustle felt like a homecoming. It reminded her of growing up in Manhattan, and as she strolled through her new neighbourhood, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. She needed a change, and so far this seemed to be a good one. Humming along with the Spanish pop tune playing through her earbuds, she turned the corner and let herself into the building where she lived. She climbed the steps to her third-floor flat and shoved the key in the door, jiggling it until the lock caught and turned. "Honey, I'm home," she announced as she stepped through the door, tugging the earbuds from her ears. "You have got to stop that," Oliver said, looking up from his spot on the couch, but his eyes twinkled with amusement despite his stern tone. "Oh, humour me. I've always wanted to say it," she said, because it was fun to needle him, but she'd lived alone for a long time, and it was surprisingly fun to have a roommate. Maybe she'd get sick of it, but for now, she was loving everything about her new life in the city. "London brings out an odd side of you, Gracie." "A fun side, I think you mean." He leaned forward to grab the remote control and silenced the TV. "Speaking of fun, the crew is going out for drinks tonight after the show. They've been asking after you. Say you'll come."